So thank you all for joining us for the Getting Started with ORCID workshop. Joining us today is Christina Miskey, Scholarly Communication Librarian for Research Infrastructure. She's going to discuss the benefits of researcher IDs, specifically ORCID IDs, and how to create them and enhance your ORCID profile. So I'm going to hand it over to Christina now.
Great, thank you, Marlena. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so welcome to Getting Started with ORCID. Today's workshop is going to be really interactive. So when it comes time, I encourage you to unmute yourself and ask questions or type them in the chat if you feel comfortable. And before we get started, for those of you that are here, I'd like to enter your first name and your major into the chat so that I can see what disciplines are here today. Kinesiology, public policy, urban leadership, great. Higher education, awesome. So those are all different disciplines that can benefit from using ORCID. It's great to have all of you here today. So let's get started. So as Marlena said, my name is Christina Miskey. I am the Scholarly Communication Librarian for Research Infrastructure. And my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm here to talk to you about ORCID. And just for fun, here's a picture of my dog. I like to show pictures of my dogs in my workshops. So this is my dog being silly. So let's go over today's learning objectives. So today we're going to learn the benefits of researcher IDs, specifically ORCID, create an ORCID account if you don't already have one, and then we're going to begin populating your profile with background, research, and scholarly activity. And we'll walk through all of these things together. I want to try and keep it as interactive and collaborative as possible. So let's get started. First, you might be asking, what are researcher IDs and why they matter? These are also called scholar IDs, and you might have heard of these before. Because most publishing is online and always growing, there's an ever-increasing number of researchers that share similar names or who change their names over time and who want to make sure others find their research. Another problem that can happen is publications and online profile systems, such as Google Scholar, can get attributed to the wrong person, whether that's you or somebody else. So using a researcher ID when publishing helps to significantly reduce, if not eliminate, these types of issues. The next question you might ask is, what kinds of researcher IDs are there? The three primary identifiers are ORCID, researcher ID, and Scopus author ID. You may have heard of one, none, or all of these. Researcher ID and Scopus author ID can get automatically created by Web of Science and Scopus databases, and it's up to you to claim them so that work associated with them can be attributed to you directly. You have to create your own ORCID record, and we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. Some other examples of other identifiers that exist out there include PubMed ID, which is used to identify and disambiguate researchers in the PubMed system. Archive Author ID, which is associated with the Archive preprint platform. And even Google Scholar, which doesn't technically have a numerical identifier, but creates a profile using an email address that's unique to each user. A lot of times, individual profile systems, such as PubMed, Archive, and Google Scholar, have their own ways of disambiguating authors in their individual platforms. But one of the benefits of having an actual researcher ID is it can often work across platforms together. So what even is ORCID? ORCID stands for Open Researcher and Contributor ID, and it's a registry that provides unique, persistent, non-proprietary identifiers for researchers, creators, and contributors of all types. It continues to grow as a standard in academia as more and more publishers and grant funders are requiring them. Each individual can create a free account that will always be free to you. ORCID is supported by institutions like UNLV that pay for membership to grow the digital infrastructure, so researchers like you don't have to pay to access it. ORCID helps to solve the problem of name ambiguity by providing a free service for you to register your own unique persistent identifier, known as an ORCID ID, to distinguish yourself throughout your career despite any changes in name, career, location, discipline, and other variables. Each person that registers and obtains a unique 16-digit identifier that is usually shown as a URL, like on the screen here. You can click on it and be taken to somebody else's profile where you can look at their previous work, see other names they've been known as to ensure you have the right person, and more. As a researcher, once you have filled in your ORCID record and continue to authorize organizations such as trusted parties connected to your ORCID record, you can use ORCID to distinguish yourself from other researchers, manage your reputation and research impact, get credit for your research, contributions, and affiliations, and overall save time on data entry, funding, publishing, and research reporting workflows. Now that's a lot of information so far. But the important thing to note is that ORCID is used by a lot of publishers, funders, and institutions around the world. Over 70 publishers are now requiring ORCID IDs with manuscript submissions, and grant funders are increasingly requiring ORCID IDs for grant proposals as well. And this includes major public funders such as the National Science Foundation, the National Institution and the National Institutes of Health. By including your ORCID ID in publishing and funding workflows, you can ensure that your work and contributions will be accurately linked to you and not accidentally credited to somebody else. Research institutions across the globe are also using ORCID ID at their institutions. So for example, here at UNLV, the Office of Sponsored Programs, which runs our grants, requires an ORCID when submitting grant proposals. We've integrated ORCID with UNLV Folio, which is our faculty annual reporting system, and you can connect your ACE account to log in with one username and password. So now that we've learned a little bit about what ORCID is, let's move on to the interactive part of the workshop. I've broken this into 4 steps that we're going to cover together. Ask questions at any time if you're unsure about anything or need me to go over something again. There's also going to be time at the end for questions. So first things first, we're going to create an ORCID account, which is also known as an ORCID record. So if you already have an ORCID account, don't worry, this isn't going to take very long. Go ahead and log into your profile and check your visibility settings, make sure your email is verified, etc., while we're going through these other steps. Now to register, you'll want to go to the URL on the screen, which I'm also going to put to the chat for you.
Oh, Christina, you got kind of quiet right there.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, sorry. I said I'm also going to put the link to the chat. So go to the URL on the screen or chat.
Oh, we can't hear you again. Sorry.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, I'm not going to lean forward. So you're going to register by entering such as.
Christina, sorry. I still can't hear you.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it's like going in and out a little bit.
Hold on a second. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
That's better. Okay. Sorry about that. where was I? Okay, so I'm just going to start over. So I put the URL in the chat. It's also on the screen. You're going to register by entering your information, such as your name, your email address, and choose a password for your account. Since you're students, I would not recommend using your UNLV student email address because that's a temporary email address. You'd want to use a personal email that you will have access to after graduation. Well, they said they still can't hear anything.
Can anybody else hear her? You could type in the chat.
That's so weird.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can't find where the chat is. Oh, I found it.
For the person that can't hear her, I would just recommend maybe signing out and then coming back in and see if that helps. It looks like everybody else can. Christina, if you want to continue.
Sorry, folks, for the technical difficulties. It happens. So as I was saying, you can also choose when you're registering whether you want notifications from ORCID or not. This is entirely optional for you. And finally, your visibility settings are going to depend on how visible you want things on your record to be. You have 3 options for visibility settings. You can choose everyone, which is visible to anyone from the orcid.org website. You can choose trusted parties, which is a restricted access visibility that's visible only to organizations or individuals you give access to your record. And then you have Only Me, which is a private profile that only gives so when people log onto the website or try to access your record, they will only see your ID and won't see any of your information. So once you've selected these different options, click register when you're done, and then you can log into your email to verify it. Despite the technical difficulties, this whole process should really only take about a minute or 2. So let me know if anybody has any questions or needs assistance with this part, since we had a couple hiccups. Yes, Karen, you can change your visibility preference later. So if you want to pick private for now and then change it later, you can do that. I'm also going to do a demo later where I can show you how to manage all of that. No problem. Okay, so let's go on to the next section. So now we're going to start adding information to your ORCID records. So make sure you are logged into your brand new profile so you can follow along with the next steps, because there's a lot of little steps to this. So we're going to start with editing your profile page. This is what the edit account screen looks like, which you should see. Yours is going to be entirely blank right now. It's not going to have anything except maybe your email addresses. We're going to focus on the education, employment, and some other identifying information today, which you can see on the circled areas on the screen here. You can either click on Add button or a pencil to edit each of these sections. So we're just going to start with the basics. First, let's add your most recent degree, and if you have a current position, your most current position to the education and employment sections. You can always go back and add more in later. So this is just a starting point. Don't worry about it being completely filled out right now. So I'll give you about a minute or so to fill that out. And feel free to type any questions in the chat if you have any questions. Okay. So next, we're going to add background information. So you can add an alternative email address to your profile, like your UNLV student email address. If you have a preferred name that's different than the name that you signed up with, or other names that you are known by or publish under, you can also enter those in the biography section. If you have a Twitter, a website, or another profile that you want to share, you can add that also. And the biography section is where you can put a short paragraph about who you are and what your expertise is, but you don't have to fill that in now. If you have a short biography ready to go, then that's great. If not, which I don't expect you to, then it looks like someone's not muted.
I just muted them.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, if you don't have all this information ready to go now, that's okay. You can go back and fill it out later. I'll give you a little bit of time to fill that in. The waiting is the worst part. I just don't want anyone to feel rushed. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. If you weren't able to do all that, that's totally okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to focus on scholarship. So I'm going to walk you through connecting your profile to some trusted organizations that will help make it easier for you to update your past scholarship and any new scholarship moving forward. If you don't have any past scholarship, that's totally okay. So first, what is a trusted organization? Trusted organizations are typically research institutions, publishers, or funding agencies that have integrated ORCID with their systems, such as a central identity management or profile system, an HR system, a research information and reporting system, publishing platforms and repositories, and grant management systems, for just a few examples. It's a good idea to connect your ORCID with as many of your affiliated organizations as possible, because you can often save a lot of time by letting these organizations add information to your ORCID record for you, so you don't have to update it manually. Connecting with trusted organizations increases the chances that your contributions and works will be linked to you, recognized, and credited. So the example shown here on the screen is from the University of Virginia, where ORCID is integrated into their institutional repository that allows an individual to authorize the university as a trusted party to add works information to their ORCID record for them. And as you can see, the University of Virginia is listed as the source of this work entry, so that you can trust who entered the information onto their profile. Organizations cannot add information to your ORCID record unless you give them permission, and you can remove that permission at any time if you choose. So to authorize an organization as a trusted party, the organization must ask you for permission to connect with your ORCID ID. When you go to interact with a system that is integrated with ORCID, you will be prompted to authorize permission for the institution to connect with your ORCID ID and your record. In this example on the screen, the organization is asking for permission to add to your ORCID record for you, as we saw in the University of Virginia example, and to read any data on your record that has been set to trusted parties only, which, if you remember, is that middle level visibility setting. So today, we're going to connect to 3 trusted organizations that will help you to populate your ORCID account moving forward. First, we're going to connect to DataCite and Crossref, which are two companies that create DOIs and can automatically add past and future scholarship to your profile. Then we're going to connect to Scopus, which is a citation database that tracks publication across many journals and publishers. And given the discipline that are represented here today, Scopus has good coverage in all of your disciplines, so that should be great for you moving forward. I'll also share how you can add scholarship manually and do a brief demonstration where we go a bit more in depth to ORCID records. That'll also be a chance for you to ask additional questions about navigating the record and making any edits as needed. So first we're going to move down and focus on adding to the works section. So here's that same screen that we saw before. And then seeing the red circles on the screen here, you'll see the work section circled, and then there's an add button over on the right side. So that's where we're going to be going back and forth a lot today. So let's begin with DataCite. So in your ORCID record, you're going to go to the work section, then click add, and select search and link from the available options that pop up. Next, you're going to see a pop-up called Link Works, where you can locate. So here, search and link. And then you're going to see a pop-up called Link Works that you can locate DataCite in the list, which is highlighted here on the screen. Click on that. You'll be taken to a new screen. It's either going to be a new window or a new tab, which depends on your pop-up settings. From there, it's going to ask you to obtain an ORCID token. This is very similar to authorizing a trusted party. DataCite is the only one I know of that uses the ORCID token term, so it's slightly different, but it's the same. So you're going to click on the Get ORCID Token button, and then you'll be connected to DataCite. So now future publications will automatically be added to your ORCID account without you having to do anything else. So I'm going to pause for a minute and see if anyone needs any help or has any questions. And also give you time to go through these steps. Okay, so we'll move on to the next. So next we're going to link Crossref. So you're going to go back to your ORCID record if you're on a new screen. You're going to go back to the work section and you're going to click add works and search and link again. So those same first steps. This time when the link works window appears, you're going to select Crossref metadata search from the list. This provides access for automatic updates, but will also do a search in their database for your name. You may have to authorize Crossref as a trusted party first. Once you've done that, you should see a search screen with your name already typed in that appears. Now this might be in the same window. It might pop up in a new tab or it might pop up in a new window depending on your settings. So once you see this screen, you're going to hit enter in your keyboard to view the search results. If you see any of your previous scholarship in the first few results listed, then you can click add to ORCID on the screen, which is circled on the screen here. And then you can select yes in the confirmation window to add the work to your record. We don't want to spend too much time doing this because you can come back to it. And I don't want you to get bogged down in searching through the search results, which can get a little distracting, especially if you're like me and have a common name where there's all kinds of stuff that pops up in the search. but you can take a minute or so and utilize the filters on the left side if you want to see if you can locate any of your past scholarship. And again, if you don't have any past scholarship, that's okay too. At least you've connected Crossref to your ORCID record for future scholarship. Okay. So finally, we're going to connect to Scopus. So you're going to go back to your ORCID record. Again, this is going to be the last time. And then you're going to go to the Works section and click Add Works and search and link again. This time, you're going to select Scopus-Elsevier from the links list, and a new tab or window will appear. Then you simply need to follow along with the steps on the screen. So I'll walk you through most of them here. First, it's going to ask you to select your Scopus profile if you already have one. If you don't, that's okay, and you can just watch through these steps. Then it's going to ask you to confirm your profile name. After that, if you have any publications already in the Scopus database, it's going to ask you to confirm those publications so that they can be added to your ORCID profile, which you would check the green check mark that's here on the screen. Finally, Scopus will ask you to authorize access to ORCID and will send you a confirmation email. So it's going to ask you to type in your email address associated with your ORCID profile, and then it's going to send you that confirmation email when you click the Send Author ID button. Once you've completed these steps, your future publications will be sent to you for confirmation to be added to your ORCID record moving forward. So what'll happen is anytime you get a new publication that appears in the Scopus database, Scopus is going to send you an email that asks if you want it to send that publication to your ORCID profile, and then you can authorize it or choose not to, depending on what your preference is. So I'll pause here to see if anyone has any questions. Okay, so now let's jump into ORCID, and I'm going to do a live demonstration of going through your ORCID profile. So first, I want to confirm you can see this screen. Okay, it's not my slides anymore, it's ORCID.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so so first things first, if you want to change your visibility preference later for your entire profile, then you go to, let's see, you're going to go to Account Settings, and that's where you're going to change your visibility settings after you have already created your profile. Now, another thing with visibility preferences that I want to point out is you'll see these 3 dots next to every single item that appears on the screen. So that is visibility settings. So you can control visibility settings for every single thing on your ORCID record, which is really great because you can you can enter it all, and then you can pick and choose what people can see or access, and you can change it at any time. So for example, I have other names that I've published under. I can change the visibility settings for each of these things. for my biography, for my email addresses, websites, and other things. So for example, here, I have my Scopus author ID. I have that set to a trusted parties in visibility setting because I don't want the general public to just know what that ID is. You can also do this for anything that you enter into employment and education and any of your memberships, funding, works, and things like that. So because we skipped over it, I'm also going to spend a little bit of time on the other sections of the ORCID record so you can kind of see what these other sections are for. So over here on the left side of the screen, you can click Preview Public Record to see what the general public can see when they look at your profile. You can also add keywords for your work or your discipline. So if you have a specific subdiscipline in your major area that you study, then you can use keywords to put that into your profile. If you publish or live and work in different countries, you can add multiple countries to your profile as well because ORCID is an international organization. The other thing that they have here, so we have employment, where you can add all of your previous employment, your education and qualifications, so this is any degrees or certificates that you have, invited positions and distinctions. This is a section for specific invited positions that you've held, which is often added by authorized trusted parties, and any awards or prizes that you've received in recognition of your achievements. Membership and service. This is for service organizations and membership to professional organizations that you have. And funding, this is if you receive grant funding or other types of funding that is used in your work, you can add specific funding here. And then finally, your work section, which is where it lists all of your different publications. And a few other things that I want to show you while we're here is when you have other options besides search and link when you're adding records. So you can use add records using a DOI, which is a digital object identifier. And that is a unique identifier for published articles and things online. You can add using a PubMed ID. You can add import using BibTeX, which is a form of citation. And you can also add manually. So when you're adding works manually, you have to enter all of the information manually. Work type. So from here, you're going to select what type of work it is. And as you can see, this is also going to be for different types of work besides things like journal articles. So you can see they have book chapter, book review, dictionary entry, dissertation or thesis. So when you complete your dissertation or thesis, this is where you can add it. If you do a magazine article, a newsletter article, a newspaper article, supervised student publication, if you build a website, do a working paper, publish at a conference, create intellectual property, and then other, you can also do artistic performance, a data management plan, a data set, a lecture speech, and lots of other types of things, software, standards and policy documents, technical standards, research techniques, and things like that. So ORCID has a lot of options available for you if you publish different types of things besides journal articles, books, or book chapters. Then you can enter in the title, any other information, depending on the type of thing that it is, a link if that exists. You can also add specific identifiers like a DOI or another identifier associated with that specific object. You can specify what your contribution to that object is, as well as identify other contributors, sorry, I can't speak, contributors to the work. And then you can also add in their information. So if it's it's published in another language, you can add another language. If it's published in another country, you can add that as well. And then you can pick the visibility settings. So that's kind of a really quick overview of an ORCID profile. Does anybody have any questions about ORCID or editing your profile that I can answer? Okay. Well, then let's get back to it. So now you've successfully created your ORCID account and connected it to certain trusted organizations, and you've learned how to navigate it and update your record manually. So next, you're going to learn some ways that you can actually use your ORCID ID in the real world. So first, an easy way to use it is you can share it. So you can add your ORCID ID to your email signatures so others can click on it when they're corresponding with you. You can also share it on academic or social media profiles, list it on your personal website, and include it in preprint repositories like this example from Archive. You can also include it in your resume or CV when you're applying for positions. Here, Archive is asking authors to add their ORCID IDs to their accounts to make searching easier. You can also search for the hashtag ORCID on Twitter and see a variety of ways that researchers display their IDs on Twitter if your discipline uses Twitter a lot. You can also include your ORCID ID when submitting your author information for future publications. So as I said earlier in the workshop, there are over 70 publishers that require or encourage the use of ORCID IDs in their publications and often will post them as part of their publication online. So to get the most out of your new ORCID record integrations with Crossref and DataCite, your ID has to be included as part of the publication when you submit it with your author information. You can also get into the habit of adding your ORCID ID to publications by starting with your thesis or dissertation. So when you go to submit your thesis electronically, you can include your ID in the contact information section of your ProQuest profile. So ProQuest has the option of looking up your ORCID account or manually entering your ID. I would recommend using the lookup feature, then copying and pasting your ID directly from your ORCID account into the provided fields. So you don't need to include the HTTPS prefix for the entire URL. You just need the 16-digit ID, and that's what you will paste into the fields that's in ProQuest. And then this information is also available online, which I will share that link with you now. So these are some additional resources that you can use to help get the most out of your new ORCID record. I'm going to paste a link into the chat for an ORCID handout, which has links on it. It's going to be useful to you. I just put that link into the chat. Feel free.
Christina, you're breaking up just a little bit. Can you repeat what you just said?
Oh, can you hear me okay now?
You're a little quiet.
How about now?
No.
I don't know why that's happening.
Now we can. Wait, talk again?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I just put a link to a handout in the chat that has all of the links that are on the screen in it. Feel free to use that to reference all of the links here on the screen. And then finally, upcoming this fall, we have our Research Impact Challenge. So this is going to take place the first week of October, October 3rd through the 7th. And it's going to help you to learn about tools and resources to demonstrate the impact of your research and other works. It's also going to have specific challenges and information related to using your ORCID record and getting the most out of it. So keep an eye out for future announcements that are going to be sent out via email and other ways. And then finally, I saved some time at the end for questions. If you don't want to ask questions during this workshop, feel free to follow up with me via email and we can chat. And with that,
Do we have any questions? You can unmute yourself, drop it in the chat, or you can privately chat me and I can ask on your behalf. Thank you so much, Christina.
thank you. Bye.